Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
I'm back with Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier. Her friends and I call her MH. We've been talking about her new book, The Resilience Plan, and how she uses her business and clinical expertise to help leaders and professionals build unshakable resilience in the workplace. MH, we wrapped up part one talking about burnout. We find that it's one of the main reasons people leave organizations. They might love where they work, but they just don't have enough support. How can companies overcome burnout?
It's fascinating situation to look at because, we talked earlier about the importance of organizations having a mental health strategy. And that's true. It needs to be there. And part of what I'm arguing is we as individuals need to have our own, because that of the workplace, keeping in mind, will, of course, that mental health strategy here, even though it's for all of us employees of this organization, really, it's still for the purpose of the organization, obviously. So it's impossible that all of the goals and values of the organization are exactly ours here, because we've got our own life, right? It's very different. So we really need to lead this. And so burnout is really it's a problem in the relationship between us as individuals and the organization. As defined by World Health Organization, it's an occupational phenomenon, 3 main characteristics. 1, we're exhausted, so we often think this is it. There's more. We're also cynical, so we've lost hope that anything's going to change. And it has an impact on our performance. And that one's important because sometimes high performers tend to think that they can override this. Like, I can keep going. I can keep doing the things I've been doing. And actually, no, there gets to a point where you cannot override your health. The problems will happen even if you don't want them to happen. And then it's hitting your brand, right? So, and of course, then that can lead to other things, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, other things on the physical health side. The main thing is that this burnout does not happen suddenly. Sometimes we realize it at a certain point only, but there were signs earlier which everyone ignores. And ideally, and we would actually pay attention, the signs earlier, before we get exhausted here, we have less energy. Before we're cynical, we're less engaged. We're not feeling the love as much. And before we're in performance changes here, which you referred to earlier with the, impact on performance, we're actually seeing more things fall through the cracks. Like everyone has at times, we try not, but there are things that sometimes fall through the cracks. We figure it out. But when you're sending the wrong proposal to the wrong client, when, there are levels of things falling through the cracks that are bigger. But even then, we tend to ignore them. Okay, fine, keep going, no time for this. And then things just continue to go down. So one of the things that I'm very much doing with people I work with is to try to pick up these signs way earlier so that we can earlier actions, which, like any other situation, if you get it in a proactive way, it's less work to come back up.
Early detection is really important, people. And and my little Irish daddy, who's now in heaven, used to say, if you have your health, you have your wealth. So by the time it's a performance, am I hearing you correctly? But by the time it's a performance issue, you might be too late.
You'd want to catch it as early as possible. By the time it's a performance problem, I would say for sure connect with professionals immediately. Your psychologist, your physician or nurse practitioner. Because at this point, really, the challenge is that means you're still at work. The brain is not there, right? You're from a health perspective, you do not have the health to be there. And therefore, it's leading to these significant challenges. And that's when you don't want to be trying to figure out on your own if it's severe enough, if it's not, what is it? That's time where you're working with registered health professionals like physicians, nurse practitioners, and psychologists.
So if you're not sleeping and you're waking up at 2:00 in the morning thinking about work or upset about work, that's the first indicator to get some help. Is that in a nutshell?
It's a sign to pay attention because often people ask this, how do I know if it's I'm stressed about this thing right now, or am I on the way to a burnout? Like, how do I know? Here's the thing. Number one, I would say any sign, even early ones, be proactive, consider them as important to pay attention, look what you can change and all this. But ultimately, you're looking at three things. You're looking at frequency. If it's happening just once, probably just interesting life. If it's happening day after day, that's different. You're looking at frequency, severity. If you're waking up at 2, falling back asleep before 3, you got another few hours, nice. But if you're now getting to 4 hours of sleep a night and it's happening night after night, different. And then the third is the impact on your sort of functioning. So if you're seeing signs, because sometimes you'll see signs at work, but sometimes you'll see signs at home too. So let's say one of your roles is that you're a parent. As a parent, you're helping, say, a young child learn certain things. And now, in most interactions, you're impatient. And child is doing their best. This is not how you want to be as parent. That's an impact on your functioning, which we tend to ignore. Because then people tell me, oh, but at work, I'm still, my professional self, all good. Then I say, how is it at home? And then they'll say, oh, well, yeah, I've been yelling and totally not my way, not how I want to be. We want to pay attention.
Absolutely. Because, the number one reason people work, you probably know this, is to take care of their family. That's why and so to come home and kick the dog or, drown the goldfish or be mean to the child isn't the way to do it. And those are signs. And I find it fascinating that we as humans compartmentalize ourselves. I am this person in the home. I am this person with my girlfriends. I am this person at work. You're a psychologist. What do you say to people? I always try to teach people you're hiring a whole human. You're not just hiring, their brain. They come with complexities. How can they engage the whole human and embrace us as people versus employees or FTEs?
No, I know, right? It's so true. Emotions don't have lanes. It's as if sometimes we think like, oh, here's the work lane, so all my stress is here, and this is my family lane, which no, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. So how do we welcome individuals as their full selves? It will come in how we communicate. It will come in, again, the strongest way to convey this kind of message is to walk the talk. So if I just say, oh, let's make sure we welcome the full individual, that kind of thing, nice. If that's one thing. If instead, or in addition, I share with my team how, so they're asking how I'm doing, for example, and I share how I'm very excited to be here. I'm excited about this project. These days, a bit worried about what's coming next for my child because they need to change school because of whatever reason. And then I can share this. And so what I'm demonstrating here is that, yes, we're a full, both professional and personal human, and that's both parts are important. Another way is to invite a broader range of identifying our emotions. Okay, not in the therapy way in the workplace. No, that's not it. But the reality is that often we're experiencing a range of emotions. So let's make sure we share that range, and let's make sure we invite the range from others. So let's say we're working on a project and a team member is sharing how they're feeling very excited about it. Wonderful empathy towards that excitement. Also share with me something that worries you about this project. So we're looking for that part. If they are coming in worried about the project, share the worries. Let's be empathic about this. Let's figure out what needs to happen next. Tell me also about something that you find fascinating about this project. Okay, we're broadening the range. Because as we do this, you see how that connects even to concepts like emotional intelligence, that self-awareness we need to have in order to then take actions that we need to take. We also need that self-awareness in order to be agile and navigate the very many demands we're facing.
What do you say to the more mature workers in the workplace who were trained to leave your personal life at the door. You're not supposed to talk about your personal life in the workplace, leave that stuff at home and you come here and you do your work and you compartmentalize. What do you say to the people who are trained like that?
So there's a couple of things. Because of the pandemic, we've branched in a bit on that territory, right? Because we were checking in with each other a bit more in most cases. So there's been a bit of that movement. But even now, still true, yes. And also beliefs that you've developed over like 2 or 3 decades of work life don't go away because even of a pandemic.
No.
So what I would say is see what's comfortable, really, right? Because the idea is not to push ourselves to a degree that feels disingenuous, like that doesn't feel like it's us. But for a lot of people that were trained this way, that it's part of the culture, even sometimes it's part of the culture of certain industries. So even newer generation in certain industries will actually think this way as well, because that's how they were brought into the work. But the reality is, we know from research that the more we can bring our full selves, the better. And by full selves, we're not saying 100% of the full selves. We're saying a little bit of full selves. And so to just do like anything we would do, go gradual. Start with something that's doable. If for you, all that means is instead of just saying, did you have a good weekend? Yep, I did have a good weekend. Can you say one more sentence? Went to a baseball game. Okay, say that. I would just look for, if you could think of it on a 0 to 10 scale, and it looks like people are sharing over here and saying a lot, and you're like, I am not doing this. Look for 1. And if you're not sure, take your time, take a few days, take the time you need. But when you see an opportunity, possibly with a colleague you're closer to, for example, possibly just with one colleague as opposed to when we're together as a team of 5, whatever makes it gradual for you so you can experiment with it. Because sometimes part of what will make us hesitate is we think it's going to be a massive deal, that we will feel uncomfortable, that it will not bring anything good. And you have to experiment. Think of other things in life that you've had to try to see whether it makes sense for you or not. Same thing here. Experiment and see. In all likelihood, you will see the response back. That will lead to an actually even more engaging interaction and potentially serve as a motivator to continue to do that.
So practice vulnerability, being a little bit more human yourself as a leader, and do one small thing, one small change that might invite the people who work with you every day to see you as a human being. And so you're modeling the behavior that you would like from the people who are serving your clients, your employees. It's really interesting when you model that. So that vulnerability thing is hard, very hard, and burnout is very hard for many people. There's a gentleman out there who is in leadership development training. He wrote a great book called Rescuing the Corporate Exhausted Hero. And you mentioned that a little bit with the burnout, conversation we were having, that those people who are trying to do it all are going to implode at some point. Those people who are at a point where I got this, I'll do it, I'll keep going. There's just this major exhaustion out there. And I think that is something to watch. Are you seeing that with the companies you're looking for, that sheer exhaustion? I know when I go into workshops, one of my questions, I talk about burnout and the top 12 reasons people leave. And I ask the audience, who here's burnout? Every hand goes up. So how can your work around workplace mental health help people with this fatigue we're all feeling?
Yes. Well, the angle I'm taking in a lot of my work and in my keynotes as well, but in this book as well, that book about resilience, about being strategic about our resilience, the angle there is to get back in the driving seat of creating a response to your context that is doable right now and that will change the course of where this is going. Because at this point, if we've gotten to a place where we're feeling exhausted, then something needs to change, and we're going to need to change it. We're going to need to make these adjustments. What's fascinating, and that's what people that I've worked with also say, is that it feels like we need an entire change for things to feel different because the problem seems so big. And then when we start at the same, on one hand, it's a bit of an in-depth change, and it's connected with very simple, doable actions. And when you start making these actions, which are actually small, they vary from person to person. But the actions are small and doable. So now we're moving from being overwhelmed and exhausted and feeling stuck and trapped and helpless because we don't know what to change, to flipping this to, wait a second, I can identify the kinds of actions that would make sense for me to do and that are so small, so realistic that I can implement them. And then people do. And once that starts happening, of course, that in itself is a bit positive. I set out to do this and I did. But not only that, from a psychological perspective, anytime we implement active coping, we'll say, it increases our sense of self-efficacy, our belief that we can influence this. Okay, now we're starting to change this. It also changes our belief that we may be able to influence this in the future. And that's hope. And now we're fighting that cynicism piece. And so while the burnout may be related to other components of the system in the workplace, so I'm not saying that all of it can be changed as an individual, but as an individual, we're going to need to make a decision here. Can we shift enough things such that I can keep going in this environment? Or am I going to need to change things? And through these initially small, doable, personalized, customized, and strategic actions that take your context into account, that's how we can shift that direction.
So it's each person, individual, making micro changes.
Yes.
In how we relate to ourselves and to others that will bring us back to a healthy place.
It brings you back to enough health to see what you're going to do. Because sometimes this system here is actually so unhealthy and not changing fast enough that you will need to make a decision to leave. Sometimes that's up. It's not always possible to say you make all these changes and therefore you can be here. Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. And that's part of the decision.
And, change is not necessarily something to fear. Change can be good for you, your family, and for the employer if you're currently employed. I feel there's a phenomenon that we hang on so tight to the people in our organizations that we suffocate them a little bit. We have to let them go. If it's time for them to go, compassionately exit and move on because, we're a river, not a, stagnant pond. We've got to keep flowing. It's the flow that helps everyone grow, I think. And so I have so enjoyed our conversation. MH, merci.
Oh, bienvenue, KQV.
Thank you for joining us on Dare to Care in the Workplace.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're quite welcome, and thank you for listening to another episode. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review in Apple or Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes. Until we meet again.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.